Okay, good afternoon, hello, and welcome to the CAS Virtual Showcase 2021, and this panel session on emerging challenges in cybersecurity. My name is Suzanne Cray. I'm the CAS Outreach Manager for the Southwest and your host for this session. We're also joined by Tim Wilson, who's moderating the session, and he'll also be monitoring the question window. Shortly, I'll introduce our panelists for today, but before we start, just a couple of housekeeping notes. During the session, please use the question window on the right-hand side of the screen to ask questions. The top of the window has an orange rectangle which can be expanded or collapsed. Tim will be making a note of questions posed there, and he'll prompt you, no doubt, during the session too. And these will be answered, if time allows, at the end of each speaker. If time is short, responses will be posted on the CAS forum and across social media channels. The hashtag for this event is hashtag CASVirtual21. As a reminder, all attendees are in listen-only mode. So allow me to introduce the panel. So today we are joined by Sergeant Andy Rawlingson, Dr. Kimberly Tam, and PC John Selby. And I know they're really excited to be delivering this session to you guys today as part of the CAS Virtual Showcase. So our first speaker today is Sergeant Andy Rawlingson, who's a cybersecurity specialist for the Southeast Regional Organised Crime Unit. Andy is qualified in information security and risk management and is an associate member of the Chartered Institute of Information Security. Schools feature disproportionately as victims of cybercrime, and Andy is currently leading the teams to deliver an ambitious webinar programme to reach every school in the region. So I'm going to hand over control to Andy so that you can start. So bear with me. Okay. So Andy, you should have control.
Hopefully I do. Let me start sharing. Bear with me 2 seconds while it decides to ask me to have permission to do so. I am here. Hopefully you can see me still.
No, we can't see you currently, Andy.
Interesting. Rather than sharing, it decided to restart the app, but let's try that again. Can you hand me control again, Suzanne?
Okay.
That's better. Right. There we go. Good afternoon, everybody. Hopefully you can see my slides, Suzanne, and I can crack on.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay.
Brilliant. Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us for this session. It's a real pleasure to be here. As mentioned, I work for the Southeast Regional Organised Crime Unit. We're a bit of an odd part of policing in that we cover multiple force areas to try and tackle serious organised crime, something that's set up a number of years ago now, nearly a decade, because of the fact that so much crime is cross-border, international, or complex. And that's certainly where cybercrime used to feature. I mean, cybercrime is now mainstream, and therefore it has cascaded into every force. But we cover Surrey, Sussex, Hampshire, and the Thames Valley, which is Oxfordshire, Buckinghamshire, and Berkshire. And I'd like to start by talking about the rise of cybercrime as a service. Things have changed at such a pace over the last decade, and it really is astonishing how much is changing all the time. And one of the shames is that over that period, we've seen some real improvements around cybersecurity. It's come to the forefront, and we talk about this more and more. But I think we do risk losing that battle, and there are a few reasons that I've taken that position. We have seen a growth, and in particular a growth around the number of devices on the internet, the number of services available, the number of accounts we all have online. And at the same time, we have seen a corresponding growth in cybercrime. And by cybercrime, I mean all sorts of things: unauthorized access to systems, denial of service attacks, a rise in cyber frauds. And that growth has paralleled the growth in technology and our connectivity. One of the threats is the fact that more and more devices are connected, the Internet of Things. You know, we've got smart watches, smart fridges, smart toasters, smart whatever. You know, do we need all of them to be smart? Probably not, but they're here. And it is a race to deliver these things into society. But these increasing number of devices are connected. 5G is now here, and it allows rates of connectivity and volumes of bandwidth that have never been seen before. We can connect virtually anything with a small set of chips. The problem is all of these devices coming online are being delivered as quickly as possible. Not every device is secure by design, and that's a real threat to the security of everything, the ability for us to defend against attacks. Security is often an afterthought rather than the principal thought for the designers, because they want to be first to market. They want their device out there before others, because first to market wins. The problem is, we have seen over the years, and then this goes back quite a long way, that cybercrime and cyber attacks have always been relatively easy to get into. There are very low barriers of entry to commit an offence. These kind of two blurry images, they are historical denial of service tools, the low orbit ion cannon and the high orbit ion cannon. They've been out there for a long, long time, but allowed people to commit denial of service attacks, to kick people off the internet at the drop of a hat, with little to no barrier to doing so. But they, in a way, were small fry. You know, the world has moved on now. And actually what we see more and more is that these kind of scaled attacks rely on these weak devices connected to the internet. One of the most common devices involved in denial of service at a modern scale is the home broadband router, because they're deployed quickly, easily, and at low cost with very little security. Home broadband routers feature as an attack vector for things like denial of service. We see all sorts of devices involved in sending phishing emails as part of these mass phishing campaigns. And that's a threat. All of these devices can be manipulated into deploying these attacks. Over the last couple of years, we saw one of the most powerful attacks the world's ever seen in the cyber world. This chap, Daniel K, I've actually met him. I went to debrief him on his release from prison. But he took a whole country off the internet. Liberia's connection to the rest of the world was overwhelmed by a denial of service attack called the Mirai Botnet. And the reason it happened was money. He was paid allegedly by another telecoms mobile phone company in Liberia who wanted to launch denial of service against their main competitor so that the customers would flock to them rather than their competitor. This was easy in the scheme of things for him to do, and he relied on those kind of internet connected devices to give his Mirai Botnet a massive scale and a massive firepower. But what we've seen is that all of these kind of attacks have spread, they've become more widespread. And over the last few months, the National Cybersecurity Centre, our experts in the UK and the public face of GCHQ, they've had to put out alert after alert for people like the education sector, saying they are being hit on a massive scale by ransomware. And a lot of people say, well, why are schools being hit with these kind of attacks? The reason is simple. They're easy targets. You know, a lot of attacks start with an automated fashion, automated scanning for vulnerabilities, and schools' budget around cybersecurity is only so big. But what we've seen as well is this movement to as a service. You know, we know that cloud computing offers infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, software as a service, and now cybercrime as a service. We are seeing things like ransomware as a service, because the cyber criminals are coordinated, they are organized. I work for an organized crime unit, and organized crime is definitely one of the biggest perpetrators of cybercrime out there. But they have these business models now. You know, they are coordinated in offering ransomware as a service, where the parent group provides the technical skill and the malicious software, and their affiliates do the hard work of finding the companies they can break into, deploy the malware, and extort the ransom. That's escalated their scale of cybercrime. But we don't have to lose this battle if we can start now. There are solutions to this. Some of this is going to be around reducing that capacity for scale. And the UK government is working on secure by design as legislation, primary legislation, to ensure that new smart devices sold within the UK have considerations around security built in. You know, the end of life for security support is well advertised. The ways that they can be updated are pushed. There's no default passwords, and that will be a big step change to eliminating these low cost, low security devices that are manipulated and exploited in these scaled attacks. But we also need to see education. We have problems with what users can do. Who's ever told you that you need to update your home broadband router and apply patches and things like that? How do you do it? Can you do it easily? Well, hopefully secure by design will change that by automating some of that scale. But we also have a problem with young people in the UK committing cybercrime. We know that from a millennial cohort study by UCL and other academic work. The young people are getting into this because the barriers of entry to cybercrime are low. We need to educate these audiences and make sure they're aware of what they're doing, aware of the legal and ethical boundaries, and bring something good to their lives. And my colleague John Selby was going to talk shortly about what that programme is from a UK perspective. But we also need to reach all of education, all of these vulnerable organisations. That's why we're trying to reach out with a webinar programme for schools, so that schools can do the easy wins, better passwords, implementing multi-factor authentication, the things that will stop schools from being a victim, but also from being involved in these attacks at scale. That is it from me. And as I say, John is going to talk more about the Cyber Choices programme in a little bit, but I'm happy to take any questions on that kind of thought.
Thank you, Andy, so much for that. It's really interesting, and actually highlights just how organised these cyber criminals are now, and seeing it as a business model is quite a different way of looking at it. Tim, are there any questions in the question window?
There aren't any questions just yet, but I will keep you posted as they come in.
Okay, all right. Well,
actually, we've just had a question in,
okay.
And it's first a question for Andy. Sorry, Andy, just come out of camera. I apologise. I realised I was off camera. And here I am. Hello. Cool. So, question for Andy. What can an individual do to prevent their devices being involved in a botnet?
Yeah, so a lot of these devices are things like home broadband router, and there are two key issues. One is that they come with a default password on the back on a sticker, which is actually pretty weak. You know, a lot of them now do look like they're going to be a strong password. You know, there's 10 characters of gobbledygook. But the danger is these are actually coming off production lines in batches of 1,000 or 10,000, and they're not as secure as they look. So as an individual user, you need to look to change default passwords on any of this new Internet of Things tech, your home broadband routers, your devices. You need to be aware of those risks and keep them up to date. You know, updating devices is really critical, because the updates aren't just bringing shiny new features like new emojis on your phone. It is applying security patches that we know criminals are exploiting.
Brilliant. And why is it so hard to stop these organised crime groups?
It's mainly because of the reach and the scale. You know, we know that a lot of crime comes from abroad. It isn't just localized. We do have a problem with some UK cyber criminals, but we're also quite good at catching them when they've caused enough harm that we can invest the time and the effort and the money. You know, there is a budgetary impact in terms of investigation. But actually, a lot of the cybercrime, when we do pursue it, goes abroad. And as soon as you're going abroad to other countries, you know, there becomes a political dimension. You know, accessing data becomes harder. Trying to actually get the bad guys and bring them back to the UK or make them face justice in their own country is a challenge of politics rather than just law enforcement.
Cool. Thank you. Those are the questions for now, Suzanne. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Tim, and thank you very much, Andy. That was really informative. And if you do think of any questions, so towards the end, if we've got time, we can pick them up later, if that's okay with you, Andy.
Of course.
Okay, great. So we move on to our next speaker, which is Dr. Kimberly Tam. So if I'll change presenter actually while we're doing that. Okay, Kim, are you there? Okay, you're there already. Fantastic. Okay, so just a little bit of information about Dr. Kimberly Tam. She has a PhD in information security from Royal Holloway University of London in the UK. She is currently a research fellow focused on maritime cybersecurity. Kimberly has more than 8 years of security experiences, from student-level projects to being co-investigator for the CyberMar project, academic lead for the CyberShip project, and other maritime cybersecurity projects. It sounds fascinating, actually, and I'm really looking forward to hearing from you. So I'll hand over to you, Dr. Tam, for your presentation. Thank you.
Sure, thanks. And I apologize. I think I sent an older version of my bio because I'm now currently a lecturer. So yay. But apologies for that. So just checking my screen is being shared at the moment.
Yes, it is. We can see that.
Great. Okay,
We
so
can't
I suppose great minds think alike, or the obvious is obvious, because one of the first emerging challenges I have in cybersecurity up on my slide is the Internet of Things. So I think a couple of things I will add on to the previous talker is to talk about why we're seeing the Internet of Things. One of the reasons for that is because hardware is just becoming so cheap these days that creating these little devices to become heat sensors or vibration sensors is becoming a viable solution because of the cheapness and how easy they are to program. Of course, that then feeds into why they're so hard to secure, because they aren't designed to be secure, as has been mentioned, but designed to kind of do one function, but do that function very well. Another thing I'll mention about the Internet of Things is the diversity of the devices we're seeing these days in terms of wearables, but also medical devices that may be internally in the body, sensors for various things, heat, vibration, light, all these things. They have just exploded the market with not only the sheer number of devices, but the diversity. Which makes it a little bit harder to secure when there's so many different standards, or even no standards at all, different types for different purposes, and that just makes the problem challenging / interesting. One of the things I wanted to highlight a bit more, oh, sorry.
Sorry, Kimberly, we can't see any slides. Are you sharing slides at the moment? We can just see palm trees. Sorry to interrupt you.
Right, that's all right. That's my fault. So, is this better?
Yes. So now I can see Cybersecurity, University of Plymouth.
Okay. Well,
Okay,
I can't think
you.
of anything to mention about palm trees, except we probably all need a little bit more of that this year. But moving on to the infrastructure side, as was mentioned, I'm currently very interested in the maritime sector, but we're also kind of working with rail, air, and other things. So how technology is affecting that area, especially with autonomy, and we're seeing, convergence of information technology, which is, your router, your computers, with operational technology. So these are the actual physical mechanisms that move things around, what makes food in factories, what makes cars, what makes ships and cars go around. So seeing more of the cyber physical side is something that's of interest to us. One of the big things, going back to IoT, that people worry about is your not just your personal data, but also things like your location. Can someone hack your phone to figure out where you or your kids are? Can they use it to, increase likelihood of kidnapping and things like that? But also in terms of cyber physical for transportation sector and other sectors, we've seen the oil pipelines being closed down. We've seen ransomware potentially affect the shipping industry. We've seen some attempts to poison water facilities. So not just stealing data or manipulating data, but actual having real physical outcomes to a cyber attack. So we're seeing these two cyber and physical worlds starting to blend more and more. And there's an interesting problem in how to stop and prevent that. So a couple of things that we are researching to look into the future, definitely forensics. So not just how do we collect the right evidence and information from new technology, new systems, but also how is that data relevant for policing, border control, all these other things. So how to feed that data into the organizations that want this information. This is closely to also ethical hacking. So again, we are seeing more people cross that line into hacking is there a way we can actually harness that ability for good? So using them to pen test the system, not for their own personal gain, but in order to improve security. So teaching students to do that ethically. Intrusion detection and malware detection, this can be both from creating new tools or improving awareness for the human aspect, or even creating AIs and machine learning techniques to do some of this for us, because there's just so much data out there and there are so many events going on that it's very difficult for everything to be assessed by people only. And of course, a lot of the times people like me will go on and on about, you know, hardware and software, but in the end we have to remember that social technical research, or that the social technical aspect. So insider threats are something that are increasing in kind of organizations and industry. So understanding the threats from the human perspective, and also remembering that people are also often one of the best lines of defense in cybersecurity. So maintaining and creating training that can help people be a part of the solution are all very critical things from the research point of view. So after rambling for a bit, I will just leave these links up for a bit and hopefully have a chat and a conversation with you guys a little later.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tam. Some interesting insights there. Just wondering if we've got any questions at all, Tim?
Hi, no questions yet. I will keep pushing for questions. Hopefully we'll have some questions for the conversation bit towards the end. Okay,
thank you very much. Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Tam. There's some useful links there, and the handouts, by the way, are downloadable via the control panel on the right-hand side of your screen. So you can look at all those slides at your leisure. Okay, so I'll just change over. There we go. Okay, so I've given you control, John, but just to introduce you. So next up, we have John Selby, PC John Selby, who's been a Metropolitan Police Officer for 8 years. He's currently deployed on the Met's cybercrime unit, working exclusively on the Cyber Choices team. With a background in frontline policing and investigations, his role is now to help deliver and spread awareness around this national programme, which looks to help talented individuals realise their potential. So looking forward to hearing about this, John. So I'm going to hand over to you, John, for your presentation today. Thanks.
Thank you, Suzanne. Am I displaying my screen at all at the moment?
Yes, I can see Cyber Choices sort of front screen there.
Fantastic. Right, I'll kick off. Any issues, please let me know. Right, thank you for having me here today. It's a real pleasure to be here to present the Cyber Choices programme to you. As Suzanne said, my name is John Selby and I'm a police officer with the Metropolitan Police's Cybercrime Unit. And coincidentally, I am on the Cyber Choices team, which is what my presentation is about today. Now, before I dive into what exactly the Cyber Choices programme is, I wanted to kind of establish a bit of context and explain why it was established in the first instance. And this follows on to what my colleague Andy was speaking about earlier. So technology is advancing at a rapid rate, and now we live in a world that's more interconnected than ever before. And this has only been brought further forward by the recent global pandemic that has seen many of us asked to work remotely and further embedded our reliance on IT and the cyber landscape. This increased development has obviously provided opportunities, whether that be through academia or through employment, to individuals at every age group. However, it isn't plain sailing, and the cyber landscape can contain many pitfalls as well as it does opportunities. And as law enforcement, it can be clearly seen as technology is developed, so has the number of cyber-related offences and the number of individuals getting caught up within cyber criminality. So that poses the question: what is legal versus what is illegal? When I use terms such as hacking and modding, they're both common terms that are used in conversation around cyber, and both can be completely legal and done in an ethical way. But inversely, if done in a non-ethical way or without knowledge of the rules and laws that govern our online space, there is a chance an individual could stray into illegal activity. So how do we approach this? Well, one statistic which kind of emphasizes this point is when we look at traditional crimes, your theft, robbery, burglary, the average age of those committing those crimes is 34 years old. When we take a look at cybercrime specifically, that average age drops drastically to just 17 years old. And so we need to come at this from a different angle. With such a younger demographic getting themselves involved in cybercriminality, we need to look at the causes behind it and how we can look to address that. One way we do that is by looking at the motivations, what drives people to commit cybercriminality in the first instance. Now, with traditional crimes, we often find financial gain to be the primary driving force behind those actions. But when it comes to cybercriminality, financial gain drops down the pecking order and different motivations come to the fore. Now, we've got a little wheel here which displays some of the ones which are most closely related, and they can relate to a desire to test your skills or be challenged. It could be born out of boredom or curiosity, or simply wanting to expound things you might have learned in school or the freely accessible tutorials that are available on the internet. From looking at these motivations and the ages of those most vulnerable at risk of being drawn into cybercriminality, the Cyber Choices program was established. Now, I should interject at this point, the logo has since changed, but the program is very much still the same. That was a relaunch that happened just a couple of weeks ago, so you may see this advertised in a different form. But the Cyber Choices is a national program run by the NCA, the National Crime Agency, and delivered throughout the UK via ROCUs, Regional Organised Cybercrime Units. There's a map on the right-hand side here which just displays a few of those ROCUs. The programme in itself looks to divert and deter individuals away from cybercriminality and promote the positive opportunities that exist for those with a good cyber skill set. It achieves this through spreading awareness about the potential pitfalls of the cyber landscape and educating individuals around the laws that govern online spaces, as well as identifying and working with individuals who have either committed cyber offences or are vulnerable to being drawn into cybercriminality. Through engagement with the programme, these individuals are given knowledge and understanding they need to help them make informed decisions about how they want to use their skills and hopefully divert them onto a more positive pathway. Now, the programme has four main aims, which is shown here. The first of which is to explain the difference between legal and illegal cyber activity, quite a fundamental approach. The next is to encourage individuals to make informed choices. It could well be the case they've already demonstrated they possess the cyber skills, but it's ultimately their decision whether they go down a legal or illegal path. But whatever that is, it's our responsibility to make sure they have an informed choice. We obviously want to divert and deter individuals away from cybercrime, and finally, we want to promote the legal opportunities that exist both in education and in employment. And there are many job opportunities in what is a growing market. So now I've spoken about the rules that govern our online spaces, and this is the Computer Misuse Act 1990. It's comprised of 5 sections here. I'm sure you may have heard of some or will be aware of this in some capacity. And the sections cover everything from unauthorized access to computers to unauthorized access with intent to impair or to disrupt the operation of another device. Now, the first focus of the program is spreading an awareness of this law and how you might knowingly or unknowingly fall foul of it. This is achieved through the program by providing inputs to schools, businesses and organisations, with services differing from ROCU to ROCU, but including school assemblies, webinar presentations, classroom activities and distribution of print and online materials. With these inputs, we try and provide real-life examples, which can be seen on the right, which might help an individual to see that activities they deem to be harmless or don't consider to be breaking the law could in fact see them committing offences under the CMA. And if the first part of the programme focuses on education, the second part focuses on working with individuals who are either on the periphery of cybercrime or have committed low-level CMA offences and helping to divert them to more positive pathways. So how can an individual come to notice? Well, there are various routes someone can come to our notice, but the main route we come in contact with individuals is through referrals. Now, these referrals can come from anybody, but most often they come from teachers, parents, those working in the social service and safeguarding sectors, and people like myself, police officers, who are out there engaging with individuals and hearing their stories, finding out what they've been getting up to. They might have concerns about somebody or feel they're getting into trouble or getting involved with the wrong groups. A referral is very easy to make, can be done online, and just requires basic details. And once that referral comes through to us, it will go to your regional ROCU, and they will assess it against our suitability criteria. Each case is a case-by-case basis, and we try and get as many people on the program as we can. If past suitable, the individual will be asked whether they want to be involved with the program, as it is completely voluntary and removed from the criminal justice system in any way. We are police officers delivering this program, but we are not delivering it as police officers. We are there to help guide the individuals on the program to more positive pathways. So it's up to the individual if they want to engage and they want to commit to the program. Once brought on, a variety of methods can be employed by our Cyber Choices teams to give that individual the knowledge and resources they need to develop their skills in an ethical way. And continued development is crucial, as we're not looking to deter individuals away from exploring and developing their talents. The world is certainly in need of those with good cyber skills at this time. Now, it's important to mention at this point, the different resources at the disposal of each ROCU vary region to region, but each individual will be given a bespoke plan of how it's believed they will most benefit from the program. And that, in a nutshell, is the Cyber Choices program. I hope you found this interesting, and if you'd like to find out more about the program, the best source of information is the NCA, and you can find that by Googling NCA and Cyber Choices. My colleague Andy, who spoke before, and I have also created this useful link here, which you can access via the presentation, which will provide you with contact information for all the ROCUs across the UK. So if you'd like to find out more about what services the Cyber Choices teams in your area can offer, they're the best place to start, whether you're looking to refer someone or just looking for some help and advice. And that will end my presentation. I'm happy to take any questions if you might have any.
Okay, thank you so much, John. So we'll just check with Tim then if we have any questions for John specifically.
We have questions, but I think they're more general questions that I think all the panelists can potentially answer as well. So if that's, you can invite back Kimberly and Andy as well. If Andy's still there?
I am still there. I've just lost my button for my camera.
No worries. Okay, so these are some teachers have sent through some questions I think are really. First question is, what tips and tricks would you give to our school to build awareness of cybercrime with them? Or to us students? Yeah.
Would anyone like to start with that one?
I don't mind jumping in if it helps. So there are, I tend to find graphs and pretty colors help. So there are a lot of security companies out there that do like an annual report, and you can kind of go and just grab some screenshots of, you know, there's been an increase in banking malware, there's been an increase in these types of attack, and they're good for awareness, and they also kind of can give a good kind of year by year look, so you can see, you know, things growing or diminishing, and I think that's helpful for some.
Okay.
I'll fill in for the next part, that's okay. So there is a wealth of information online available regarding things around online safety. More specifically, there's now a growing trend in software and websites which promote ethical opportunities to develop skills. So if you have a student who is got a passion or a talent for cyber that moves beyond what they can learn in school, I would definitely recommend looking online. There are some great services, Cyber First and Cyber Discovery, just to name a few, which are services that run both sort of games on their websites and also practical physical courses which students can apply to go on to as well to learn a bit more. Obviously, I would also promote ourselves on the Cyber Choices aspect. We have a lot, I speak for the Met, different ROCUs may differ, but we offer sort of print resources, digital resources, and like Andy's doing in his area, we can come in and give presentations around specific aspects like the Computer Misuse Act, keeping yourself safe online with passwords, social media, 2FA, various things like that. So the information's out there. There's some great resources for it, and we're happy to point you in those directions if you need some advice.
Thank you. Thank you. Andy, anything to add?
Yeah, just like to add, really, let's not forget the staff and teachers at school as well. You know, I mean, a lot of them will feel lost around this area. So there are some great resources out there. You know, the National Cybersecurity Centre have their top tips for staff e-learning, which will give staff just a really simple grounding in some of their behaviours. And then, you know, to make sure teachers feel prepared to teach the subjects, you know, look at the National Centre for Computing Education and their courses for teachers to develop, as well as obviously all the wonderful resources CAS provide, and the networks available to people there to talk about this, explore this, and develop further.
Thank you, Andy. And we didn't even ask you to say that, did we?
Don't need to. You guys are all brilliant partners for what we're trying to achieve as well. I'm grateful to everybody who works in this field, everybody in STEM. You know, it's wonderful to see people trying to achieve the same thing.
Okay, thank you very much. Tim, we've probably got time for one more question if you've got one there, a general one.
Yeah, this was a question that came in from one of our attendees. If we suspect a young person at our school is up to suspicious behaviour related to cybercrime, what would you recommend that we do to address this?
Andy, do you want to kick off with that one?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, the first thing is to understand what it is they're doing. You know, I mean, you don't want to trample all over the evidence if it's so serious that you need to call police in from an investigation point of view. But a lot of the time, you know, our intent as law enforcement is not to wade in with our size 9 boots and trample all over this kid's life. You know, this is about diversion. It's about making choices. And that's precisely why these cyber choices teams exist. Every force in England and Wales now has a capability to deliver this, and Scotland indeed have joined the party as well. So, you know, reach out to your cyber choices team in your area and find out what we can do to support that young person, because we can come in and help. And quite often the challenge is also about the language. You know, young people use language quite freely around cybercrime. You know, things like stressor, booter, you know, it's all alien to a lot of teachers, but they all mean denial of service. So sometimes it's just a case of deciphering the language as well. You know, there's some glossaries available out there to understand these terms, but the kind of first port of call is your local cyber choices team.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you. John, did you want to add to that?
No, I would echo exactly what Andy's just said. I would say, obviously, understanding the issue is the first port of call. If it's something you feel we can help with, we are here to offer help and advice. We, as I say, we're not the unit that comes in and tries to deal with it from a police perspective per se. We're the unit that will come in and try and help that individual in the first instance until we can.
It's so good to have a positive sort of intervention, isn't it? That is there in a supportive capacity rather, as you say, than sort of wading in from a police perspective. So thank you. Dr. Tam, anything to add to that?
No, happy with to agree with the others.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, and thank you to all of you actually for joining the panel today. Some really good practical advice, as well as obviously some really good information about the systems and platforms that are around. So that brings us to the end of this session. So I'll bring it to a close. At the end of this webinar, a short survey will appear on the screen, and we'd be grateful if you could take a minute to complete that survey. A recording of the webinar will be available on the CAS YouTube channel after this session, and also on the CAS website. We hope to see you at the other sessions in this summer showcase this year. The next session is tomorrow at 12 o'clock and is all about EU Code Week. Finally, please do continue to spread the word about computing at school. And thanks for joining today. Thanks again to our panelists. Have a lovely evening. Bye for now.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Don't know this.